All right, testing. All right, so the input works. So the first go around, the audio didn't work, so I'm re-recording this video. All right, so the first thing I like to do before I trade for the week is I go look at the economic calendar. So we have Jerome Powell speaking on Tuesday at noon. We have FOMC member Williams speaking at 9:15 pre-market on Wednesday, and then University of Michigan consumer sentiment on Friday. So not a lot of data dropping. We have unemployment claims on Thursday morning. But yeah, so the yellow folders don't move the markets much. Orange folders, sometimes if the data or the information is worse or way better than expected, but the red folders are what definitely move the market. All right, so we don't have much going on there. And then in terms of earnings, I don't have much on, I don't have any on my slate for this week. So nothing to look at in terms of earnings. Microsoft announces earnings in the next few weeks, but yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. I always like to get started by taking a look at SPY. So let's take a look at SPY first. So SPY, it recently, so it made this low and then a high right here. It came down, made a higher low, and then a higher high, a higher low, because this low is higher than this one and this one. And then it made a higher high. So technically we're in an uptrend. We have three higher lows, actually another higher low right here, another higher low here. Every time we pull back, every swing low, we're going higher. So we're technically in an uptrend. And notice, we're starting to curl. We're starting to curl. So it broke out of this long-term resistance line. Hold on one second. It broke out of this long-term resistance. As you can tell, rejected 1, 2, 3, 4, finally broke out. We broke out, retested, and went higher. So let's go look at the 4-hour chart so you can see everything a little better. What I'm expecting is a break below this 410. We might get a soft bounce into 411.5. But when we break below 410, I will want to get into some puts for a move down to 408 or as low as 406.5. I'll be taking some profit in this area. Could be a really nice move to the downside. Now, I do want to play a bounce around 406.5 to 408. This general area is demand. I want to play a bounce right around there with a pretty tight stop. So I will want to catch the move down and then catch the move back up if it happens. That's SPY. Now, QQQ is trading very similarly. If we take a look at the daily chart, QQQ also broke out and continued higher, making higher highs, higher lows. Let's go to the 4-hour chart so you can see the data a little better. I expect QQQ to kind of chop in this 303, 302 range pre-market, and then ultimately, if and when it breaks 300.8, I'll want to catch a move down to 297.8, 298. So about a $2 to $3 move, and then I'll get out of the puts and start trying to catch an area of reversal for a bounce generally in this area. And then lastly, IWM, which is the Russell 2000 ETF, small cap stocks. This one as well broke out a long-term trend line and is heading higher. Now, we have a lot of demand below us, so we could start pulling back to these demand areas and starting to bounce. And if that happens, if we start to bounce in this name, a lot of the small cap tickers, a lot of small cap stocks will be starting to get a really nice bounce. All right, so my first watch is Apple. Apple for a bounce in this area right here. I love this 151 bounce on Apple. Why? Because we kept rejecting it here. We finally had a very bullish continuation. Notice how on this day when we broke out, we came and bounced at 152 all the way up to 155. So almost 156, almost a $4 move. I'm looking for a very similar thing. Notice how this day when we broke out, we bounced right here, went higher. We came down to this area and bounced higher. We bounced in this general area. I'm looking for something like that. So move back down to this area, 150 to 152 for a bounce on Apple. Next up is Meta. I love this one. I love Meta. I love Apple for a potential bounce in this range. Meta kept rejecting this area for a long time. And now if we get down to this area, 171.5 to 173, I'll be targeting a bounce on Meta. Next up is Baidu. Let's look at the weekly chart. So Baidu has this strong resistance area here. If we can break above this 156, 158 area, we have room to 174. Let's take a look at on the weekly chart though, so you guys can have a little better view. Actually, let's look at it on the 8-hour chart. That'll help a little bit. All right, so Baidu. If Baidu can get some strength, it really needs to hold this 140 area. If it goes below 140, I won't like it. But if it can get some strength and start breaking above this 159 area, then I will want to catch a move up into that 170 area and taking profit on the way up. Take profit halfway up and then full profits up here with a very tight stop loss. But it needs to start breaking above this area first. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. All right, next up is CrowdStrike. I like CrowdStrike for a balance between 107.5 and 109, especially if it does it kind of like this in like a little bull flag falling wedge type pattern. I do want it to bounce because it bounced here, had tried to bounce here and then flipped it and now rejected, and then broke out. Now I expect to bounce in this area on Baidu between 109 and 107.5. Next up, CCL, Carnival Cruise Lines. We mentioned this last week. I wanted it to break out above this area and it ripped. Now I want to come down into this area and bounce at about 11.2 to 11.5, especially again, if it does it in a little flag pattern like this, very tight consolidation, no hard sell-off. I do want to bounce on CCL in this general range. All right, next up is CRM. CRM is making a very similar pattern. We had it on our watch list last week. It broke out and made an explosive move. Now I want it also to come down in this pattern and bounce around 167, 168. Very tight stop loss if it closes below 167. If it does that, then the next bounce would be in this 160 area, but I wouldn't really want to take a bounce down here. It could be nice, but I'm not interested in it. It depends on how it gets there, but I do want to bounce in this general area with a tight stop loss on CRM. Next up, Docu. Docu's got an inverted head and shoulders. The head's right here, left shoulder, right shoulder, and it finally broke out, as we mentioned last week as well. A lot of these names we're just looking for continuation from plays that we called out last week. So I want it to get down about 60 or 61.5. Especially again, if it gets down there in a falling wedge bull flag pattern, consolidates into this area. I want to get in calls here for a move back up to 70. That could be a 200, 300, 400% play, but a very tight stop loss if it closes below 60. Next up, Home Depot, which is the third largest holding of the Dow Jones. And if you want to take a look at the Dow Jones real quick, just so you can see. So all-time highs on the Dow are right here. If we just pop about 8%, 9%, yeah, if we have an 8% pop, we'll be at all-time highs on the Dow. So the Dow is doing very well compared to the S&P 500 and especially compared to the NASDAQ. What I want on this one is to consolidate. We rejected here, rejected here, rejected here, rejected here, we're rejected here. I want it to hold above 330. It's got to hold above 330 for me to like it. And this needs to consolidate in this general zone. If it consolidates in this general zone, then I will target a breakout move into this area. So I want to catch a move, at least part of the move from here to here. I want to catch part of the move. Can't really ever catch the whole move, but I do want to catch part of it. Next up is JP Morgan. If financials start turning around, I will want to target JP Morgan above this 143, 144 area for a move to 146. But financials need to be doing well. And the way to know that is go to XLF, which is the financial sector ETF. And this one, it's starting to get above this area. But if you look, this area is supply right here, right? So we kept bouncing in this general area. Now we're rejecting this area, but we've been rejecting it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Eventually, it's got to flip. It just can't reject this certain area forever. And you can't bounce at a certain area forever. Like it couldn't bounce at this area forever. It finally broke down. So I'm looking for that flip on XLE. And if XLE does that, I want to focus on JP Morgan or Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is also trading, in this consolidatory pattern here, right? And so it's starting to hold above 46. As long as it can hold above 46, why 46? Well, because this is a strong supply and demand area, right? We kept bouncing that area here. Once we broke below it, we kept rejecting it. We held here for a while, then flushed. We finally got it back above it. Now I want to kind of start basing out in this general zone. If we can start basing out, it'll make me have more confidence to take a breakout later on. If it doesn't base out for a while, then I won't want to catch it. Next up is Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is, with the global global politics, it's one to take a look at for sure. We have an inverted head and shoulders, head right here, left shoulder right there. The neckline being 466.67. If we can consolidate and break out above this area, we have a move to 474, 475, and maybe even higher. And notice we're both flagging. So if we can break out, we could get a continuation, but I don't know if it'll get above 474, 475. So, that would be from let's call it 467 breakout to 474. That's a $7 move. That's a very good move. And my stop loss would be about a $1 to $2 stop. So that's a nice risk reward ratio right there. Next up, McDonald's, which is the 5th largest holding in the Dow. If it can hold this 262 area, which is a big if it can hold, then we could target a move back up to 268. Nice little falling wedge into this area. Disregard this candle right here. I'm actually going to delete it. The New York Stock Exchange had a really big malfunction that day. But yeah, so we're holding this area, which we rejected for a while, and we bounced at it. So now this is a 3rd bounce. If it can't hold it, obviously I'm not interested. But if it can hold it and start breaking out, I will want to target a move back up to here. I want to catch that move right there. Next up is MU. This one is another one that's consolidating below this 66 area. It's consolidating, rejected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So it's rejecting this general area right here, right? It's rejecting that general area. But if it can hold this 58.6 area, 58.7, then I will want to take a very light position for a move back up to this area for maybe a week or two out. The contracts on this one are very cheap and they're very liquid. So you won't have to worry about a wide bid-ask spread. And you won't have to worry about very expensive contracts. So this is a cheap one. It's not my favorite to watch, but this is one like Micron hasn't ripped like AMD and NVIDIA have. This is one of the laggers, Micron. And so it's kind of on my watch list, along with, if you take a look at INTC, this one is at supply as well. So if it can start consolidating, let me zoom in. If it can kind of start consolidating in here, then I want to take this break with a stop loss below here. If we hit the first profit target, I'll have a break even stop loss, but for a move, through these supply areas. But, rejected here. So if it can get above 30.5 and start consolidating, then I will like it. And that's INTC. Yeah, INTC and MU have, been lagging a little bit. Now, if we're bearish, one that I like is NIO, because if you take a look at the weekly chart on NIO, huge bear flag. There's also a big old weekly gap to fill right here from 9.4 to 10.7, huge gap fill, which coincides with the breakdown level of the bear flag. So if we look at the daily chart, this is a huge gap. Now let's look at the 4-hour chart. In an ideal scenario, we would pop right back up to 1167 and reject. If that happens, we start to reject, I'll take a light position for a move down here for a week or two out contracts. 1 or 2 weeks out gives you time, gives you some breathing room, and then I would have a stop loss if it gets above 11.8. It's really 11.7. If it breaks and closes above it, yeah, I'd quickly stop out. But my target move would be all the way down here. So that's a huge reward to risk reward ratio. Next up is NVIDIA. It has a lot of demand. If you take a look at the weekly chart, we have a head right here, inverted head and shoulders with the left shoulder and the right shoulder here. And this is the neckline. We're above the neckline now. So we should move back down toward it and start to bounce. So if we can start to get into this 200 area, give or take, 196, 197, 201, this general area, I will want to take the bounce, but I'll be watching SPY, S&P 500. I'll be watching the NASDAQ in conjunction with this name to make sure I'm not taking a trade against the trend or at a very dangerous area. But NVIDIA is one that's got a ton of demand. So I do expect it to pull back and pretty much get every pullback get bought up until 200 to 196. If it closes below 196, then I will not be interested in taking it for a bounce until it gets down below 190. Next up is PFE. So I'm not going to say the name of this because I don't want this video to get flagged, but this is a pharmaceutical company and they've had some recent bad news. If you take a look at the weekly chart, oh, that's a 4-hour chart. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. So they had some bad news. A video came out about them and some like scandalous stuff, and they dropped about 22% from these highs over the last month or so, 2 months. The video came out over the last couple of weeks and they continue to drop, but it's almost like one of those situations where it's already fallen enough, and I don't think this video is going to have much impact on it. Pharmaceutical companies are very powerful. So let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. I do like it for an upside play. If it can break 44.5, then I think we have room to 45.5. So that's a dollar move. That's about a little over that's 2.5% in the underlying stock price. Let's see, that's a 2.5% move. Yeah, 2.3%, 2.4%. In the option world, that'd be enough for like a 50-60% play. But yeah, if we can get above this 44.5 area, I will be interested for a long side play, maybe 1 or 2 weeks out. If it breaks above 45.5, then it has room to 47 or even 48 potentially in a best case scenario. All right, next up is Plug. So Plug had a nice little cup and handle pattern. It's trading in a huge wedge pattern, right? That's on the weekly. If you look at the daily, we have a huge cup and handle, and we broke out. And now I want to see if we want to break out above that. We have a huge gap to fill between 18.9 and 20.4. Let's just call it 20. So from 19 to 20 bucks, we have a dollar gap to fill. So if we can do that, if we can start to trade bullishly above the 17.4 area, and start to consolidate right here. Let's say we consolidate in like a bull flag pattern and start to gain some momentum. I will want to take a breakout above 18.9 and hopefully it continues through 19 and up to 20. I would have a very tight stop loss on this one as well. Next up is Roku. Has a nice falling wedge and it broke out and retested it. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. So there's the falling wedge. It broke out, retested it. You can see it a little better on the daily chart right here. There we go. So it broke out, rejected, came back up to it, rejected, retested, and went right back up. So now it's above that area. If we look at the 4-hour chart, you can see a little better. Yep, there we go. So these rejection areas, now we're above it. I want to see if we want to take a bounce at 61. If we can start to hold at 61 and bounce, I think 61 could be a really nice bounce play on Roku. Next up is Shopify. Let's take a look at Shopify on the weekly chart. Very similar pattern to that Roku play. We had strong resistance here, resistance here, resistance here. We finally broke out above it. This one also made a little cup and handle pattern, broke out and just exploded through it. Let's take a look at the daily chart and we can see a little better view. All right, now let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. We can get one last better view. There we go. All right, so we bounced here, we flushed it. We rejected it a few times here. Now we're holding this area. I want to see if we can continue holding this area. I don't actually like this one that much. Maybe a 50 bounce. If it gets to 50, play the bounce with a very tight stop. Yeah, that's really all I don't like this one that much anymore. Let's see what I wrote about it. Yeah, if it can hold 50 or 51, then the upside is up to 60, but my stop would be at $50. Next up is SMH, which is the semiconductor ETF on the weekly chart. Well, let's just take a look at the daily chart. The daily chart, it had some nice demand right here, held it for a while. Once we broke below it, now it's supply, and now we just broke above it, right? We broke above it, and we need to hold it. So on the 4-hour chart, if we can hold this area, let's say tomorrow we just trade like this, I might think about swinging some calls on some semiconductors, as long as we hold this area. But if we break below it, then I won't really be watching it as intently. But yeah, this area has been resistance for a while, and we finally broke it. Rejected, 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 breakout. As long as we hold it, I want it to, I want to touch like 245 and then get right back up there. I want that dip to get bought very quickly. I'm going to set an alert for if it breaks below that line. There we go. All right. Next up is Spotify. All right. This is another one that I need to hold. All right. So this one, nice little cup pattern, 2 cups pattern. So if it can consolidate right in this general area, and I will add a line right here. Now let's go look at the 4-hour chart. So if it can consolidate, let me activate that like this. If it can consolidate like this in this pattern, then it will validate my conviction on taking a potential bounce or breakout out of this range above 122. If it breaks above 122, it's got room to 129. Why is that? Well, on the daily chart, you zoom out all the way back here. So back in 2019, there's a huge gap to fill from 122 to 129. Notice that little gap right there with huge volume. So what I want to do is take advantage of that gap fill. I want to take advantage above 122, we can get a move to 129 on Spotify. Huge gap to fill. Now, next up is Target. Target on the weekly chart, you'll see, okay, there we go. On the weekly chart, we've had a very difficult time. We're having a difficult time cracking this 184 area. So what I want to see is us hold this 172.5 area, the green line. If we can hold this green line, then we can get into some calls down here for a move up to 185 and potentially a breakout. You get some cheap calls here for a move up there. They'll be so expensive here if you're holding. Hopefully it breaks out above 185, but obviously you want to take some profit from 172.5 to 185. If that happens in a week, your contracts would be up several 100% at least. All right, next up is, let's take a look at Uber. This isn't a priority watch for me, but on the daily chart, it is kind of rejecting this area. So in the coming days or weeks, I pretty much just want it to hold above here and start just kind of consolidating in this box. Pretty much is all I want. But if Uber can start doing that, then I'll be, talking about it a little more in the coming weeks. And then lastly, Tesla. So Tesla, if you take a look at the weekly chart, broke out of this falling wedge. It has an inverted head shoulders, left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Looks better on the daily chart. Hold on, there we go. On the daily chart, left shoulder, right shoulder, very quick right shoulder. But it's trading between 200 and 180. So what do we want? We need it to get down either like around 165 and bounce or bounce at 180. One of those two bounces. If it can't hold 180, then I think we get a slow grind down to 165 for potential bounce. But if we bounce 180, I will want to take it long for a move back up to 200. And if it breaks 200, we have a move to 207 to 210. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you don't mind subscribing, that helps me out and gives me more motivation to post these videos for you guys. I hope you guys crush it. I hope you make a fuck ton of money this week. And if you guys ever have any questions, send me a DM on Instagram. I'll get back to you guys within 24 hours. And if you want to trade live with me with the live stream and all that, hit the link in the bio on Instagram or just go to earlybirdoptions.com/plans-pricing. All right. Hopefully you guys found some value in this video, and I will talk to y'all later. Go make some money this week. Much love. Bye.